And it's interesting because Motus, they're the automotive distributor, the automotive company, they said today that the fact that more people seem to be buying Chinese cars in South Africa had an impact on their local division. Operating profits in its import and distribution division dropped by 45%. Overall for the group, the picture was much better. Osman Arbee is the CEO at Motus. He joins us now. Osman, good evening to you. What was happening in your local operation? Some of the brands you sell, Renault, Kia, Hyundai, is there just less demand for them?
Good evening, Stephen, and good evening to your listeners. So the import business had a fantastic year to June 2023. So we came off a high base. In that year, there were no vehicles available on certain of the brands, and we made hay while the sun was shining. So that was 23, and 24 comes. We've got a lot of Chinese brands coming in. We've got Suzuki bringing a lot of vehicles from India, very competitively priced, made in rupees, sold in dollars to them, and then they sell in rand. So the competition's been very active in South Africa from the Chinese and Suzuki. And, obviously that impacted us and it hurt our business. But whatever went up will come down and whatever goes down will go up. We'll find a new niche for ourselves. We control 18% of the brands. They make up Hyundai, Kia, Renault, and Mitsubishi. So, what happens in South Africa is that the consumer is under stress, high inflation, high interest, and as a result, looking for cheaper vehicles. And the Chinese vehicles are coming at very good prices, and people are shopping there. So, the premium brands or the well-known brands like Hyundai, Kia, VW, and Toyota take a bit of a knock. But it'll stabilize at some stage. It's just a question of when.
Do you think then in the end, other brands will be able to compete against them? I mean, the brands that you deal in will be able to compete with Chery and Haval, and price is a very, very important criterion in buying a car.
Yeah, I think what happens over time, there are 80 brands in China. So even if 20 brands come to South Africa, which are you going to be your winners and which are going to be your losers? No one knows that. So at some stage in 2 years from now, the brands will filter themselves. That means the good ones will be here, the bad ones won't be here. So inevitably, the existing brands would lose some market share to the Chinese, but not everyone's going to buy a Chinese either. South Africa sells 520,000 vehicles, and everyone will get a fair share of that market. So it'll stabilize.
Okay. I mean, it's interesting because VW said this week, this is Volkswagen saying they might have to close factories in Germany because they can no longer compete with China. I thought that was astounding.
Correct, because remember the manufacturing of cars in Europe has become expensive labor, expensive cost of doing business. So it's very difficult to compete against the East. Now, for example, if you take Suzuki in our country, you're driving a Japanese vehicle that comes from India. 91% of the Renaults that are coming to our country are Indian vehicles. 70% of the Hyundais are Indian vehicles. So cost of production is cheaper still in the East, and that's where a lot of the factories are going to produce the vehicles to remain marketable.
Overall, we've been talking about what happened in your South African operation, but overall, operations in other countries for the Motus Group did quite well, your UK and Australian operations in particular. That must have helped you a little bit?
Australia had a great time. We sold 40% more cars than we sold last year. Profits are fantastic. The UK, we're very big in commercials, and in the UK, they move their goods on trucks, not on trains. So as a result, that business did very well for us. And then we're big in aftermarket parts, which is the equivalent of a Midas in the UK. We're number 4 in the UK, and that market's doing very well for us, selling parts to vehicles outside warranty. So that business did very well. The commercials did well in the UK. So our EBITDA went up by 4%. Our operating income was down by 3%. But had we only had a South African business, we could have been minus 20, 25% down. But because we got a good split between South Africa and offshore is 35% of our earnings, we managed to get our operating income at minus 3%.
It hasn't gone so well for some other companies that have branched out overseas. Osman, you retire next year. Being a CEO in South Africa is a tough job. Ockert Janse van Rensburg's coming in. I presume you know him very, very well. Your advice to him, your advice to any CEO operating in South Africa, it's a tough environment, make it a little bit easier in the next few months?
I'm very privileged that I've been working with Ockert for the last 7.5 years. So we unbundled from Imperial in 2018 when our operating income was 3.5 billion. I'm handing over a business to him at 5.5 billion, and he was part of the vision to develop it. So he and the ExCo members that are there help develop this business. So the strategies are all in place, and they can only grow from here onwards. We've got a good business offshore, 35% of our income offshore, 65 local, and we got great opportunities with great people, and this business can only grow from here onwards. And he's got a good support with good board. He's got a good ExCo team. He'll go places.
I can hear you're a fan, Osman. Osman Arbee, thanks very much indeed. CEO at Motus on The Money.